Hello and welcome to the Mr. 50mm YouTube channel. I'm Mr. 50mm. In today's video, we get to look at something not from Nikon. Weird. Now, specifically, the thing we're going to look at that's not from Nikon is the Canon 5D, the original one. This is commonly now referred to as the 5D Classic or 5DC, and in this video, I'll probably be referring to it as the 5D Classic for most of the time. As some of you may know, from my 1DS Mark I video, I had a 5D Classic previously. But this was more than a decade ago. So while I was looking for something else to explore, I was actually considering getting the either 5D Mark II or the 5D Classic. And I went for the 5D Classic because when I had it, I didn't have it that long until I ended up selling it and just continuing to shoot with the 5D Classic, which I shot for over a decade. So, just to be clear though, get things out of the air, this video is probably going to be a bit biased. Now, I didn't intend it to be this way, but when I first picked up the camera, pulled it out of the box, I felt a lot of nostalgia holding this camera. Now, when I first took a photo of it, memories came back, happiness was felt. So that's probably gonna bleed into this video. Now, with a lot of older cameras that I did have, and the cameras I'd reviewed on this channel, I probably have owned them in the past, but I didn't tend to own them for nearly as long as I did with the Canon cameras. That's because primarily in the past, I shot mostly Canon EF system stuff. And throughout this photography journey in general, up till kind of recently, I tended to kind of gravitate towards Canon. While I do tend to rave, and I did tend to rave in the past about other camera systems, I ended up always coming back to Canon. That said, let's get into it. What is the 5D Classic? To start, it's a full-frame EF mount DSLR made by Canon. It was announced on the 22nd of August in 2005. The camera features a 12.8 megapixel full-frame CMOS sensor, and it has an ISO range of 100 to 1600, with the expansion options opening up to 50 ISO and 3200 ISO. The camera body is made out of a magnesium alloy. However, the body is unfortunately not described as having weather sealing, so no pool parties for the 5D Classic. The AF system on the camera is also a bit funky. It has technically 15 AF points, although 6 of them surround the center point and are only used in the camera's AF tracking modes, with the other 9 being selectable, and only one of those, the center one, being a cross-type AF point. So, for this camera, focus and recompose will be your friend. Now, the camera is an utter speed monster, handling shots at up to 3 FPS for up to 17 RAW files. Metering is done via Canon's 35 segment module, and the shutter range for this camera is 30 seconds, 1/8,000th of a second, with a flash sync of 1/200th of a second. The average shutter life rating for this camera is 100,000 clickies. Now, the 5DC features an optical finder, it being a DSLR, obviously. The finder covers 96% coverage of the frame. Now, on the rear of the camera, you'll get a rear LCD there that you might notice there. It's 2.5 inches and has 230 K dots. Storage medium for the 5D Classic is, of course, compact flash card. And it's powered by the ubiquitous BP511s. Unloaded, the camera weighs in at 810 grams, or 1.8 imperial measurement units. A king's gram, I think? I forgot. This roughly equates to 0.81 plena. When the camera was released, the camera came in at a very extremely wallet-friendly $3,299 USD, or in the future now monies, roughly $5,275 USD, or roughly 7,215 Maple dollars for everyone that lives up in the North Tundra. For reference, the full frame camera offering at the time, the other option was the Canon 1DS Mark II, and that came in at a depression-inducing 5,000, sorry, 8,000, they read that again, 8,000 USD at the time of its announcement. Many dollars. More asterisks. What now? Okay, so even a legend is not perfect. This statement is it's true here. For those interested in a 5D classic, there's one thing specifically to watch out for. It appears that it's possible that the Canon 5D Classic's main mirror, this thing, the big reflecty thing there, falls out, literally. Now, I am led to believe it's not great. Bad, even. This is, however, due to apparently problems with some of the adhesion used on the 5D Classic during installation, which led to a fairly high failure rate and said loosey-goosey mirror. Now, I'll post a link to the service advisories and the descriptions below. There was an advisory issued for Canon, and they had offered a free repair services starting in February of 2009. However, as of the 30th of that date doesn't make sense. As of the end of February 2015, the free repairs were no longer being offered. Now, I ran the numbers. 2024 is unfortunately beyond 2015. So that's not good. However, if you're even a little bit handy, it seems like this is actually no big deal. I'll post a link again to a video instructional that I found on YouTube that appears to show you, well, doesn't appear, it does show you how to basically glue the mirror back on. And it doesn't seem to be a very big job to do it. Now, that being said, best if you can avoid having to do it. So I'll post another link to a video describing what to look for ones that are potentially less susceptible to the floppy mirror than the original 5D Classic models that came out early on. And again, it'll give you information on what to look for and how to tell. The joys of using the 5D Classic. We'll start things off with body and design. The joys of using the 5D Classic. We'll start things off with body and design. I'll start by saying that button layout, feel, and ergonomics are just about as perfect as the Nikon D200. The Canon's interpretation of good design is just as good as Nikon's, just a bit different. The deep grip is very comfortable, and it's not rubberized, so again, not as comfortable as it should be. However, for the purposes of longevity, it kind of means that this thing isn't likely to rot or peel like other cameras. So, a bit of give, a bit of take. However, the 5D's best elements are design cues taken from the Canon 20D, which is clearly inspired by older film SLRs, like this one, the EOS 1N, which has this giant rear control wheel. It's also featured here on the 5D. Now, another one that is a very big feature, it's Canon's second camera in the DSLR lineup to feature the now ubiquitous thumb control knobby up here. This thing. And just in case you're not aware, this can be found on a huge number of DSLRs and mirrorless cameras now. Now, if I'm right, Canon was kind of the first ones to adopt this particular thumb nubbin. And now it's kind of spread around through several camera brands. One of such is the Sony camera that I'm shooting this on. We also have the Canon 40D. It's over there as well. And, of course, we have other cameras as well. The Sony A99. You got a thumb nubbin right there. All of this combines to give the user an excellent user experience, where you can manipulate almost all of the camera's critical settings by just feel alone, with your eye never having to leave the finder. Now, anything that requires you to do some menu diving, it's also a familiar affair for anyone that's ever used any Canon DSLR or mirrorless camera, except it's even simpler, as this camera doesn't feature all the advanced bells and whistles of modern cameras. So opening up their menu presents you with something amazing: simplicity. Now, if you have a look, the camera menu system, it's really only divided into three color-coded subcategories. Just excellent. Now, the other niceties that come with this camera being a prosumer level camera is the top LCD right here. Now, unfortunately, as you can see, the backlight is amber and not blue, so 1 point off. Now, that being said, there's one other slightly more serious point off, and that is this button here on the back of the 5D Classic. This is a direct print button. It's popped up a few times in their other cameras, it's on the 40D as well, and I don't know a single human ever to use this button, and it really kind of makes me angry that this button wasn't just a menu option, because it feels like a wasted button in an otherwise very excellent camera design. And yeah, it actually makes me angry. Now, I kind of want to mention the rear LCD real quick. With a lot of the older cameras around this era, it sometimes feels like when you use the rear LCD, it is a potato. Now, the 5D isn't that exceptional by any means. However, it is usable, and that is more than can be said for quite a few cameras of the era. Now, checking sharpness and looking at the old histograms is totally fine. And we'll have a look here. Now, I understand you're looking at it through a camera recording it, but take my word for it. It is a reasonable LCD for checking composition, checking focus, checking histograms. You know, not bad. Now, shooting the camera, it's a great time overall. Even though the finder isn't 100% coverage, it is big, it's bright, and it's clear. The camera also has a party trick up its sleeve. The focusing screen that the camera is equipped with is hot swappable. So if you want to swap the base one that comes with the camera with something a little more manual focus oriented, you can do that. It's designed to pop out and slot in a new focusing screen. Now, another thing I want to talk about is the camera's AF system. Now, it's very basic. Generally, you're going to want to do your center point and recompose, like I said earlier. Now, I have used the camera to do sports in the past. It isn't by means the best, but it is doable. Basically, you got to pin your subject right in the center and plan your clicks out. It's not as good as more sports-oriented AF modules in the past, like even at the time that the camera was released. Never mind modern AF modules that have magic net tracking abilities, but again, doable. That said, the 3 FPS shooting speed doesn't really help either. And again, this requires you to plan and time the shots. But that being said, let's have a listen at the shutter. Nice. A point that sometimes gets tossed around is the lack of the auto ISO on the 5D Classic. Now, I'm not really sure how I feel about this. Personally, I get it. Once you have it, it's hard to go back to a system that doesn't have it. But at the same time, I've used the 5D Classic and the 5D Mark II line of cameras so much that my hands kind of still, they remember where to move to change the ISO without taking my eyes off the finder. Let's see if I can still do it. There you go. So really, there's a solution for this. Train yourself so that you too automatically move your index finger to the right place to just change your ISO when you need to. You do have the auto ISO built in. It's this finger right here. Now, speaking of ISO performance, the camera is from 2005. So high ISO isn't its thing. tops out at the 3200 with the expansion, and it's not super good. It's not bad, and again, just as I say with a lot of other cameras, once you run your images through modern noise reduction software, they look pretty solid. Of course, you do end up paying a price for that. Your dynamic range will fall a bit the more you push, more so than modern cameras, but it does still make a usable image. One fault that does come out that is kind of true is the pretty basic metering. It is a reliable and predictable 35 segment zone system, and the system generally tries to protect highlights. So again, keep that in mind, and if you need to, have that exposure comp button there at the ready, and just adjust as needed. The camera's resolution, still, I think it's still very excellent for modern web and social media use. You know, I actually still have photos and prints that came from the first 5D Classic I ever had, and like they look great. They're printed out in the 20 by 30 format, and they're currently hanging in my house. The only thing that I think the 12.8 megapixels kind of limits you on is croppability. But other than that, perfectly fine. Now, I do want to bring a little side benefit from the 12.8 megapixels, and this applies to other DSLRs of an older vintage as well. And that is that with 12 megapixels, you get a side benefit that you won't necessarily need super crazy glass to get an acceptable image. You know, glass that probably won't cut it on a 61 megapixel sensor, probably fine on this 12 megapixel sensor. Additionally, with the 5D's 12 megapixels, I don't need to petrify myself just to be steady enough to take a photo handheld. So, double bonus. And, you know, other things to think about. Dynamic range, you know, at the time the camera was released, pretty solid. In 2024, it is showing its age a bit. But again, it's not to say it's unusable, it's quite tolerable. Good even. I would say that this 5D Classic is in line with Micro Four Thirds cameras of maybe like 2 generations old. So it really, depending on how you look at it, the sensor holds up really well in modern conditions. So, you know, don't shoot the camera directly into the sun and you'll probably still be fine. Get ready to do some exposure compensation, and again, things will probably turn out pretty good. One thing I'm not really probably going to comment on is the 5D Classic's straight out of camera JPEGs. I don't tend to just shoot JPEGs ever, so I'm probably not the best person to judge the JPEG output. I only tend to shoot RAWs, so, you know, unfortunately, if you came here for a JPEG review, I do apologize. That being said, for RAWs, I do find that the files are pretty malleable, and whatever they did with the anti-aliasing filter on the 5D Classic compared to the 1DS Mark I, I like it. Seems that the images on the 5D Classic here need less sharpening than the 1DS files. So what I'm saying is the 5D Classic is good at capturing details. Maybe it's just me though, but you know, I'm gonna let the edited photos do the talking when it comes to sensor output. So let's get to it. All right, So we're going to start off the recommendation by saying, right off the bat, the 5D Classic can be had for very cheap. And that's going to be a factor that comes into play. Goodish copies seem to float around for around 200 USD, and rough ones, like mine, are close to around 150 USD. You might have noticed that I don't have a rubber flappy thing here, and that is because on mine, the original one, it came with the camera, but the minute I tried to open it, it just disintegrated. So 3D printed a cover to go on top of it. So for now, does the job, makes it relatively smooth, and I can still shoot the camera and not randomly have my hand go into a side of ports. So yeah, take that into account when you are shopping for your 5D. And that brings us to the next point. A lot of the 5D classics nowadays are in rougher shape. I think that's pretty common due to the fact that the camera's age and popularity are just like things to consider. They're very, very popular workhorse cameras of the time. Now, another weird thing about the 5D Classic is the Digic 2 processor used in the camera. What this basically means that unless you are Canon, shutter counts from this camera don't really get read easily. Most software tends to want you to have a Digic 3 or newer. So it means likely that if you are getting a 5D Classic and it has a shutter count on it, it's probably an estimate rather than a reading from one of the files. So if that worries you, keep that in mind. Lastly, again, it goes back to the asterisks that I talked about earlier with the potential for the mirror to become loose. Again, something to consider. I'm going to guess that cameras that are this old now, mirror's probably good, but again, things that you don't want to just discount. And again, I also want to mention that the mirror falling off is fairly easy to remedy with minimal skills. So with all that in mind, I still think the 5D Classic is an excellent camera. And if you're on a very tight budget and you want that full frame look, and you don't mind the look at the expense of more quality of life features that you get with newer cameras, it's really worth a look. This is doubly so if you already have EF lenses, or if you have a plan to use the 5D Classic with manual focus lenses and like a focusing screen. This is an excellent camera body to do so. Additionally, even though a large number of YouTube personalities, such as this one, have kind of pumped the camera up, prices seem to remain fairly stable and are fairly low, probably due to the fact that these cameras were sold in such large numbers. Now, I imagine one day that supply of available cameras will dry up, but for now, the supply is pretty healthy. Alright, so that's about all I wrote for the 5D Classic. So, I still very much love my 5D Classic. It's something that I definitely still recommend to someone who's looking for a cheap full-frame camera. But I do want to ask, how many people out there are still shooting the 5DC? Who's considering one? And what do you think of the 5D Classic? Is there anyone out there that's actually experienced the loose mirror problem? I've personally, again, this is my second 5D Classic. My first one never developed a problem when I had it about a decade ago. But yeah, has anyone here actually had that problem happen to them? Let me know down below. And with that, as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Till next time, bye.